Is your HOA always this fair? The notice slammed against my barn door paper slab, claiming violations built from photos that weren't even my siding, my gravel, or my damn roof line. Karen called it authority, but when the porch light flicked across her clipboard, I saw the real proof token, a permit draft stamped, "Do not enforce." Right before the gavel drop that would undo their entire scheme. Next week, the expansion land use permit they forged was voided in full, and the HOA clubhouse went silent. The paper wasn't on my barn at sunrise, but by noon it was nailed there like a verdict. One bright silver nail dead center in the red board of my door. I killed the engine on the mower and just stood there for a second, letting the fan on the motor wind down the only sound in the yard. Red Ridge sat quiet around me. Cedar line at the back gravel drive, my old workbench just inside the open bay. Same morning I'd had 100 times. Except this time somebody had brought paperwork. I walked up and put my hand on the sheet. Standard letter size, bright white against sun-faded paint. Whoever did it had driven the nail in deep. The paper puckered around the metal. I eased it off, careful not to rip it in half. Across the top, in bold black letters, "Notice of Violation." My stomach did a small, confused flip. I read the next line. Filed 03-17 RR HOA 02207. Received 09-13-3-17, I muttered. Who files anything at 3:17 in the damn morning, Dad? I looked over my shoulder. My son was standing by the tractor hand up to block the sun. Why, is there a nail in your barn? I turned the paper so he could see. Apparently we're in trouble. He walked over, wiping his palms on his jeans. Is that county? Not exactly. I tapped the header. RRHOA, Red Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association. His eyebrows shot up. We don't have an HOA. Yeah, I said. That's what I thought. He scanned down the page. Structural hazard. Fire hazard. Unauthorized commercial use. He looked from the paper to the barn and back again. They're talking about this place. No, they're talking about another 40 by 60 red barn with my parcel number on it, I said. Of course they're talking about this place. Is it bad? I folded the edge of the paper back with my thumb. Each bullet point had a tiny, grainy photo beside it, 3 little rectangles printed in black and white. Look at the pictures, I said. We both leaned in. The first showed a roof line, but the angle was wrong, too high, like it had been taken from a ladder across the road that doesn't exist. The second showed a stack of lumber by a door that wasn't my door. The third had a timestamp under it that read 0206, even though the shadows in the shot ran long like late afternoon. That's not our siding, my son said. And that's not the gravel. Yeah, I said quietly. And that timestamp doesn't match the light. He squinted. So, what does that mean? It means, I said, handing him the paper, we're going to look at something that isn't fake. I pushed the barn door open. The hinges creaked the way they always did, metal on metal. Inside, the air was cooler, touched with oil and sawdust. My workbench sat under the buzzing fan tools lined up in the shadow of the rafters. Against the back wall stood my metal permit cabinet. Waist-high dent in the bottom corner where I'd clipped it with a wheelbarrow years ago. I'd bolted it to the concrete myself when we finished the pour. Grab the handle, I told him. See if it sticks. He did. The door swung open smooth. That cabinet, I said, is where the real story lives. I pulled out a thick binder labeled in my own block handwriting, Barn, 2015 to 2016. The plastic cover had yellowed a little around the edges, but the county stamp inside was as dark as the day they pressed it. Here, I said, flipping to the first page. Permit. Structural. Signed off by Clark County. No mention of an HOA. No reference to any Red Ridge Meadows anything. He traced the date with his finger. You built this when I was in middle school. Yep. I tapped the bottom of the page where it said, Approved. I argued with the inspector about the size of the footing right over there. I jerked my chin toward the column by the big bay. Won that one, too. He looked back at the notice in his hands. So how can they just show up now? They can't, I said. Not legally. I took the violation from him and laid it on the workbench next to the old permit. New paper on the left, older paper on the right. One earned. One, something else. A staple in the corner of the notice caught my eye. I flipped it over. A second sheet was attached. It was a tighter printout of those same 3 photos and a little strip of text below each one file. Names, dates, coordinates in a font 10 sizes smaller than the headline. Look, I said. He leaned in. What are those numbers? Metadata, I said. When the image was taken. By what? Where? Is it wrong I compared the coordinates to the ones at the top of my survey in the binder? They were close, but not right. Off just enough that if you didn't know every inch of this hill, you'd miss it. Yeah, I said. It's wrong. He swallowed. Like, on purpose. Wrong. I stared at the 2 pages at the nail hole, torn through the word violation. Someone faked this, I said. They didn't make a mistake. They made a story. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The fan spun, clicking softly at the end of each turn. Dust floated in a shaft of light through the open barn door. I walked back outside and touched the little circle in the wood where the nail had been. Bare wood raw and bright against the red paint. My son stood in the doorway. So what now? Now, I said, we document. I held the notice up with one hand, pulled my phone with the other, and framed the shot so the filed line and the nail hole both sat dead center. Say, cheese, I muttered. Click. The shutter sound felt louder than it should have. I took one more of the empty spot on the door, just that fresh wound in the paint. Click. When I lowered the phone, the screen lit up again on its own. Incoming call. Red Ridge Meadows, HOA. My son saw it and took a step closer. Seriously, I stared at the caller ID thumb hovering over. Accept. Are you going to answer? He asked. I looked at the barn at the papers in my other hand at the empty place where my survey should have been in that binder. No, I said. Let's hear what they sound like when they think we're not listening. I let it ring. The call dropped into voicemail. A moment later, a little red dot appeared on the icon. You gonna play it? He asked. Inside, I said. We went back into the barn. I set the notice gently on the workbench next to the old permit and hit play. A smooth, recorded voice came through the speaker. This is an important notice from Red Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association regarding your recent violation. A mandatory compliance hearing has been scheduled, 14 days from today. Failure to appear may result in additional penalties including, but not limited to fines and further action on your property. The message clicked off. My son looked at me. Mandatory hearing. 14 days, I said. Can they do that? I looked at the notice at the permit at the empty pocket in the binder and felt a slow, cold anger settle where the confusion had been. They think they can, I said. That's the part they got wrong. He nodded once, jaw tight. You're not just going to take it right. I picked up the violation notice, folded it along the header, and slid it carefully into the front sleeve of the binder, labeled Barn, 2015-2016. You don't nail lies to a man's barn, I said, not without a fight. I closed the cabinet door. Metal met metal with a solid final sound. 14 days. That's how long they'd given me. They didn't know yet that they'd just nailed their own clock to my wall. She walked up my driveway like the gravel already belonged to her. I heard the SUV first tires rolling slow over rock. I was by the mailbox with a wrench in my hand, half expecting more fallout after the notice and voicemail. The vehicle eased to a stop at the edge of the drive, late model crossover, spotless white. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out in a pastel blazer and flats. She looked at the barn before she looked at me. A younger guy in a polo and reflective vest climbed out on the passenger side, camera hanging from his neck. "Mr. Callahan," the woman called. "That's me," I said. She smiled, professional and practiced. "I'm Karen Larson, president of the Red Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association." She said it like a badge. I glanced at the clipboard she carried. Thick stack of paper. The top sheet printed with a logo, stylized trees, tidy houses, and under it in italics, Red Ridge, Meadows, HOA, Expansion Zone. I wiped my hand on my jeans and didn't offer it. You're a long way from your cul-de-sac, Ms. Larson. She gave a small laugh. We've adjusted our boundaries. That's why I'm here. You received our violation notice. I received a nail in my barn door, I said. I assumed that was you. It was our field team, she said. Standard delivery when there's a serious safety concern. Your structure is in non-compliance with community standards and fire mitigation guidelines. Community, I repeated. Is that what you call people you've never met? She let that pass. Your parcel now falls within the Red Ridge Meadows Expansion Zone. The board approved it, and it's recorded with the county. With that jurisdiction comes responsibility on our side and yours. Behind her, the guy in the vest lifted his camera and snapped a shot of the barn. Don't do that, I said. He hesitated. Ma'am, document? The existing condition, Trent Karen said, without looking back. He took another step toward the fence line. What gives you the right to stand on my driveway and photograph my barn? I asked. Karen tapped the clipboard with her pen. The expansion zone overlay does. It's our job to protect property values and safety along this ridge. Funny, I said. When I pulled the permit in 2015, the county just told me to pour a footing and not burn the place down. No HOA, no overlay, no you. Her smile thinned, but stayed. I understand this feels sudden, she said. That's why I came personally. We're not the enemy here, Mr. Callahan. We're trying to resolve your non-compliance before it escalates. Non-compliance with what I asked. A map you drew last year. With the expansion land use framework we adopted for this area, she said. It's all explained in the compliance pathway. She slid a manila envelope out from under the clipboard and held it toward me. I didn't take it. Cliff Notes, version I said. Humor me. If you sign the acknowledgement, she said, we'll work with you to bring the barn into alignment. Exterior finish usage limits hours of operation. There's a grace period on fines if you commit within 30 days. So, I admit I've done something wrong. I said, then you're generous. It's not generosity, she said. It's standards. Trent shifted, angling for another shot. The shutter clicked. The sound felt too loud in the wind. You get authorization from the county to enforce anything out here, I asked. The expansion zone was reviewed with the planning department, Karen said. The details are between us and them. Your role is to comply. See, that's where I lose you, I said. You keep saying zone framework guidelines standards. Not once have you said law. Her jaw tightened a fraction. We're not here to argue semantics, she said. We're here to help you avoid consequences. Consequences based on a violation built from photos that aren't even my barn, I said. That made her blink. What do you mean, she asked. The angles on your notice. Wrong. The light wrong. Gravel wrong, I said. Whoever shot those frames wasn't standing on my land. Whoever compiled that packet either didn't care or didn't want to. Karen's gaze slid toward Trent. He stared at his shoes. This isn't personal, Mr. Callahan, she said, voice cooler now. It's authority. There's the problem, I said. Authority starts with the truth. Standards don't start with lies. We let the wind carry that one. Then she set the envelope on the hood of my truck, smoothing the edge with her fingers. You've been notified, she said. Inside, you'll find a summary of your violations, the compliance pathway, and your hearing details. 14 days. I strongly recommend you read it. I strongly recommend I said you ask before you nail anything else to my property. Her eyes flicked past me to the barn again. Trent, she said, we're done. He took one last photo of the barn in profile, then headed back to the passenger side. Karen slid behind the wheel clipboard on her lap. Cooperation goes a long way, Mr. Callahan, she said through the open window. So does resistance. The window hummed up. The SUV backed out, gravel crunching under its tires, and rolled back down toward pavement. The yard went quiet. I picked up the envelope. No stamp, no seal. Just my name and parcel number printed in black, and beneath that in smaller type. Mandatory hearing. 14 days, expansion. Land use, permit, enforcement. I turned it over once, feeling the weight. They thought they'd brought authority up my hill. What they'd really handed me was one more piece of proof. The bell over the diner door gave a quick chime as I walked in. Ethan was already in the corner booth laptop, open coffee half empty. He didn't even sit when I reached him. He just pushed his glasses up and said, "Show me the photos." I slid the packet across the table. The plastic sleeve slapped lightly against the formica. He thumbed through the images the HOA claimed were of my barn head tilting the way he used to when we worked on old tax records together. Back then, he'd catch a duplicated signature or an altered timestamp the way other people spot a typo. "All right," he said. "Let's take these apart." He pulled the photos out, set them in a row, and cracked his knuckles like a man about to carve a roast. Then he opened his laptop and started typing fast, sharp keystrokes echoing under the low hum of the diner's neon sign. "Look up," he said. I leaned over his shoulder. He'd zoomed in on the first photo. "Roofline wrong, gravel wrong door." He pointed to the corner. "See that lens distortion from a wide-angle phone camera. HOA packet claims DSLR, doesn't match." He flicked to the second. "Timestamp says 0206, but look at the shadows. Long cast, low angle afternoon, not night." He opened the third. "And this one, it claims GPS coordinates on your ridge. That location is 600 feet south of your property." I let out a slow breath. So they faked it. He kept typing. Lines of metadata streamed by like a confession. "They didn't just fake it," Ethan said. "They faked it badly." The waitress passed setting a fresh pot of burnt diner coffee on the warmer behind us. On the bulletin board above it hung flyers for Tractor Repair Missing Dogs, the VFW Pancake Breakfast. My son and I had taped notices there for years. More real community and 10 thumbtacks than the entire HOA packet. Ethan tapped a key and sat back. "Here's the kicker." He rotated the screen so I could see. These photos were modified on a workstation registered to RR Meadows Admin 03. That's an HOA machine. Not county, not state. HOA. He took a long drink of coffee, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "This isn't an error," he said. "It's fabrication." My jaw tightened. "So they filed a violation based on photos of a barn that isn't mine?" "No," he said. "Worse. They filed a violation on a property they don't even legally own jurisdiction for." The diner clatter around us faded. That sentence landed like a wrench dropped on concrete. "You sure?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "The county doesn't recognize the expansion zone as enforceable yet. And HOA metadata shouldn't be anywhere near a notice filed at AO317. I exhaled through my teeth. They knew what they were doing. He gathered the photos, slid them back into the packet. "You don't fake evidence unless the truth scares you. And something scared them enough to take a swing at your barn." Any idea why Ethan shook his head? "But if they're building a case based on fake documentation, it's because a real case doesn't exist." The door chimed again. A gust of cold air swept through the diner. I took that as my cue. "I need to check something at the barn," I said. "You coming? I've got a meeting," he said, closing the laptop. "But send me whatever you find, and mark." "Yeah, lock your doors." I walked out to the truck, the wind pushing gravel across the asphalt like dry leaves. Something about the way he said it tightened the space behind my ribs. By the time I reached home, the afternoon sun had shifted behind the ridge. The barn door creaked as I opened it. Same tools, same air, same shift of dust in the light. Then I saw it. The metal permit cabinet. The door wasn't flush. It hung open by maybe a centimeter, barely noticeable, except I knew that cabinet like my own hand. I walked to it slowly, boots thudding on the concrete. I pressed the door. It clicked shut, but didn't sit right, like someone had tugged it too hard and the hinge caught. I opened it. One binder sat crooked, pulled forward half an inch. A page inside had folded over on itself one of the original permit documents. The order I'd kept for years was wrong. Someone had been in here. I swallowed a string of words I hadn't used since my son was in diapers. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Email, Clark County Record Subject HOA Case File. Uploaded includes Expansion Land Use Permit Draft. I stared at the screen, then at the crooked binder. fake violation, fake photos, and now a permit draft magically appearing in county records. The truth wasn't just ugly, it was intentional. The map loaded slow, like it knew it wasn't supposed to be seen. The old laptop hummed on my workbench fan, whining under the barn's yellow light. Outside, Red Ridge was just a black line of trees and a cold wind. Inside it was me, the glow of the screen, and the email from the county. Subject line HOA, case file. Uploaded includes expansion, land, use, permit, draft. I clicked the attachment. For a second, the screen went black, then the program spun up with a soft beep. A grid appeared, then color blocks, then parcel lines. The progress bar crawled along the bottom. "Come on," I muttered. "Show me what you're hiding." The image snapped into place. At first glance, it looked like any planning map, pale green for open land light, gray for roads, tiny parcels outlined in thin black lines. Across the top, neat text. Red Ridge Meadows, expansion land, use, permit zone. My parcel sat in the middle third of the screen. The outline of my property was there, but somebody had draped a translucent pink overlay right over the ridge where my barn stood. It was like watching a bruise spread. I zoomed in. The cursor turned into a little magnifying glass. As I got closer, more text faded in along the bottom edge. There, faint but readable slanted across the whole file, watermark internal draft. Not authorized. I sat back on the stool. Internal draft, I said under my breath. Not authorized. The laptop gave another quiet beep as a system message popped up in the corner. This file contains one or more hidden layers. Hidden layers. I clicked the little eye icon on the side panel. A new legend line appeared. Layer expansion zone. Status pending. Not authorized. My parcel flashed, then the pink overlay blinked like a bad conscience. I picked up my phone and dialed. Ethan answered on the second ring. "Tell me you're calling from a computer," he said. "I'm calling from the barn," I said. "With your favorite thing." "Let me guess," he said. "A document that shouldn't exist." "Close," I said. "A map. The one they use to pretend my land belongs to them. Walk me through it," he said. I could hear his keyboard in the background light and fast. The file's labeled Expansion Land Use Permit Zone. I said, "Pink overlay right over my barn. Watermark says Internal Draft, Not Authorized. There's a hidden layer tagged Pending, Not Authorized." Ethan whistled. "They uploaded that to county records case file," I said. "The email says it's part of my violation." "That's not just sloppy," he said. "That's desperate." I right-clicked on the file and pulled up the properties. A box opened with a list Created Modified Owner. My thumb froze over the trackpad. "Ethan," I said, "you're going to like this part." "Hit me," he said. "File owner is listed as RRAdmin02, I said. Modified by K. Larson, RRAdmin. There was a beat of silence on the line. "Karen Larson," he said slowly. HOA president herself. "Not the county GIS office," I said. "Not planning, not zoning, HOA admin." "So they drafted their own expansion map," he said, marked it pending. "Never got authorization, then used it like it was law. Used it to nail a violation to my barn," I said. "At 3:17 in the morning." The cursor blinked at the bottom of the properties box. My reflection stared back at me in the dark laptop screen. Border-tired eyes, oil-stained shirt, a man who'd just realized somebody had tried to redraw the ground under his boots. "This map doesn't just show an expansion zone," I said quietly. "It shows intent." "How far off are the lines?" Ethan asked. "About 60 feet, I said. "Just enough to pull my barn into their pink zone. Just enough to claim jurisdiction." "And the county never signed the expansion land use permit?" he asked. "Status tag says pending, not authorized," I said. They didn't wait. They just acted like it passed. On the other end of the line, keys rattled as Ethan ran his own search. "All right," he said. "I'm looking at the official county index. There's no recorded finalized expansion land use permit for Red Ridge Meadows. Just a filing entry marked incomplete. Meaning, I asked. Meaning he said they have no legal authority to enforce anything based on that map. Not a fine, not a notice, not a single nail in your door. I zoomed back out, watching the pink blob shrink until it was just a stain across the hillside. They rewrote the map to rewrite the truth. I said. Exactly, he replied. If they can redraw the line, they can steal the land. I let that sentence hang in the air. The barn felt smaller all of a sudden. The walls, the rafters, the beams I'd lifted with my own shoulders, they were all still there. But, on a screen in front of me in a file, Karen never expected anyone outside her office to see my barn was an obstacle inside their plan. They used this draft to justify the violation I said. They waved it at the county like proof, and if no one looked too closely, Ethan said it would have worked. The laptop fan spun a little louder. Outside, the wind pressed against the barn siding and then let go. "What do we do?" I asked. "We put this in front of someone who actually has authority," he said. "County can't ignore a forged jurisdiction map, especially not one uploaded by an HOA into a case file." I shifted my weight on the stool. "You free tomorrow?" "Depends," he said. "Are you planning on bringing coffee?" "I'll buy you more than coffee," I said. "You still owe me a beer." He laughed once, short and dry. "Send me screenshots tonight. Don't edit anything. Full screen file properties watermark. I'll start a folder. On it," I said. "And, Mark," he added back everything up. Twice. "If that file disappears from county records by tomorrow, we're going to want a copy they can't scrub." I ended the call and started capturing the screen. Watermark internal draft. Not authorized. Layer pending. Not authorized. Modified by Clarson RR admin. Every beep of the screenshot tool felt like another nail in their own coffin. I saved the images to a thumb drive, then to an external hard drive I kept in a drawer under the bench. The barn light flickered once, then steadied. I looked at the map one last time at the pink smear over my ridge and felt something cold melt into something sharp. Tomorrow, I said to the empty barn, I'm taking this to the county with Ethan. Dana read the permit draft for 10 seconds and said, they used this to fake authority. She didn't sit back. She didn't sigh. She just stood there by her desk, the pages held up to the light like a mechanic checking a cracked gasket. Her office looked exactly like the kind of place where bad paperwork went to die. Framed permits and orders lined the wall. Shelves of casebooks shared space with mismatched county file boxes. Out of the window I could see the gray block of the courthouse a street away. She flipped to the second page of the expansion land use permit draft and dragged her thumb along a highlighted paragraph. Here she said, "Read that." I stood and leaned in. Yellow ink glowed over a bland line of legalese, "Permit pending approval. Do not enforce. Do not communicate as active authority." She looked at me over the top of the page. "And yet she said they nailed a violation to your barn built on this." I felt my jaw clench. "You're sure this is the same document Karen had in her hands?" "It's the same file ID Dana said. Same hash, same modification trail. She uploaded this to the county case file as if it were active authority. Even with that sentence in the middle, I asked. Especially with that sentence in the middle, she said. She either didn't read it or she didn't care." I sat back down. The chair creaked under my weight. "So, where does that leave us?" I asked. She laid the draft on her desk, smoothed it out with her palm, and clicked a pen open with her thumb. "It leaves us with a simple story and a complicated cover-up." She ticked points off on her fingers. 1. Your barn was permitted in 2015. No HOA jurisdiction. 2. She went on HOA tries to expand into your ridge with an expansion land use permit. County never approves it. The status stays pending. 3. Despite that, they act like it passed, I said. She nodded. They start issuing violations built on a map that has no legal force. They file it into your case file like it's gospel, hoping nobody reads the fine print. I stared at the highlighted "Do not enforce." "Can the county get in trouble for letting that slip?" I asked. "Somebody at the county was lazy, not malicious," Dana said. They let the HOA upload documents directly into the record. That's a workflow problem. What Karen and her board did with that access, that's where it leaves my office and walks into a courtroom. My phone buzzed on her desk. An email preview slid across the screen from Ethan. Subject: Screenshots archived. Dana tapped the phone gently with her pen. That the auditor? Yeah, I said. He archived everything before we came here. Map, properties, your favorite watermark. Good, she said. He's our first witness even if he never takes the stand. We'll build this so a normal person on a jury could follow it in their sleep. She pulled a fresh sheet of letterhead from a drawer. The top read, Whitaker Law, Land Use and Administrative Appeals. Step 1, she said we file a formal objection, on the record. We challenge the violation as unenforceable because it's based on a non-approved permit. She wrote the title in big letters, Formal Objection. Unauthorized enforcement of pending permit. Step 2, she continued, we flag the expansion land use permit draft itself as evidence of misuse. We quote their own language back at them. She underlined, do not enforce. And step 3, I asked. She smiled, small and sharp. We dare them to schedule a public hearing. Because if this goes public, that entire permit collapses. The way she said public made the hair on my arms stand up. You think they'll fight? I asked. Bullies with paper always fight, she said. They just don't fight well under lights. I glanced at the wall behind her. Rows of framed orders clipped news articles about zoning boards backing down one photo of Dana on courthouse steps, holding a cardboard file box and a half smile. What do you need from me? I asked. She sat her chair rolling in with a soft squeak. I need clean narrative and clean proof. You've already got the proof. Now you give me a story. I'm not a storyteller, I said. You built a barn by hand, she said. You can string 3 honest sentences together on camera. I frowned. Camera? She nodded toward my phone. You said other neighbors have stories. HOA doesn't just test this kind of overreach once. They practice. They came after an old guy down the road about his fence line, I said slowly. He paid a fine because he didn't want the hassle. Exactly, she said. You go home, you shoot a short video explaining what happened. Not a rant, a timeline. Barn built, no HOA, fake notice, fake map, pending permit. Do not enforce. Then you say you're challenging it, and put it where I asked. Wherever people in a small town actually look, she said. Facebook group, neighborhood page, that bulletin board at the diner. You don't have to go viral. You just have to make it very hard for the county to quietly ignore this. Paper doesn't lie, people do, I said. She snapped her fingers. That's your line. Use it. I pictured the bulletin board over the coffee pots at the diner, Ethan's flyers pinned next to lost dog notices and church dinners. You're going to make this ugly for them, I said. I'm going to make it accurate, she replied. Ugly is just how fraud looks in daylight. She glanced at her screen as an email pinged in. Her eyes narrowed. Speaking of daylight, she said, you just got an answer. From who? County records, she said, rotating the monitor so I could see. To M. Callahan, C.C. Whitaker Law. Subject, acknowledgement of objection filing. Below it, a single new line of text from a different sender, public hearing expansion land use permit challenge. A date, time, and room number at the county administration building followed. Dana sat back satisfied. There it is, she said. They wanted a quiet violation. Now they've got a public challenge. I stared at the line, Expansion Land Use Permit Challenge, until the words started to feel heavier than they looked. This wasn't just about my barn anymore. They'd dragged the whole permit into the light with it. The room didn't quiet down all at once, just in pieces, until the hum of the projector swallowed everything. And when the first slide hit the screen, Karen froze like she'd just seen her own name written on a verdict. Channel 6's camera clicked on behind me. I didn't turn around, but I could feel its light pressing between my shoulders. The crowd filled every row of the county hearing hall neighbors, ranchers, retirees with coffee and metal tumblers. The American flag in the corner barely moved, but the air felt restless. Dana stepped forward first. This, she said, tapping the remote, is the document Red Ridge Meadows HOA used to issue a violation against Mr. Callahan's barn. A faint blue watermark glowed across the map, internal draft, not authorized. Murmurs shook through the room. The projector hummed louder, like it was uncomfortable showing something that shouldn't exist. Karen sat at the HOA table pastel, suit-tight jaw hands laced too neatly on her folder. Trent sat behind her pretending to read something that wasn't there. The rest of the HOA board looked like they were waiting for someone else to speak first. Dana turned to the county legal officer. This is the expansion land use permit the HOA claims gave them jurisdiction over my client's property. The officer nodded slow. Ms. Larson, did your organization have authority to enforce this? Karen's tongue pressed against her cheek. She didn't speak. Dana clicked again. The next slide showed a close-up of the fine print enlarged until the words filled the whole wall. Permit pending approval. Do not enforce. Do not communicate as active authority. Someone in the back whispered, "They really used that." The county officer folded his hands. Ms. Larson, please answer. Karen swallowed. We operated under the understanding that the permit would be approved. That wasn't the question, Dana said. I felt my hands go still on my knees. Not clenched, just steady. The officer leaned forward. Did you have authority at the time you issued the violation? Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Minnie, Cliff. The room waited. Dana didn't. Let the record reflect she said that the HOA president is unable to confirm lawful authority. Another ripple went through the crowd, small sharp. The projector hummed again, softer this time, like it was relieved. Dana stepped aside, glanced at me. Your turn. I stood. My knees popped a quiet sound swallowed by the wooden floor. I faced the county panel, not Karen. 12 words. Clean, cold, cinematic. They faked authority to steal what the map says isn't theirs. A woman 2 rows back muttered, "Good." Another mini cliff ripple. The county legal officer exhaled through his nose. We will forward this to Judge Herrick's for immediate review. Karen shifted panic blooming under her stillness. The pastel suit looked too bright now, too fragile. Before anyone moved, my phone buzzed. Dana glanced at it, first saw the caller ID and angled it toward me. Ethan Morales. Video call. I answered, held it slightly away so the mic caught everything. Ethan's face appeared fluorescent diner light behind him. I ran the metadata. Again, he said, voice sharp. It proves the violation packet was built off a fake jurisdiction. Every layer, every coordinate, every timestamp. Karen's face drained a shade. Dana nodded once. Thank you, Ethan. Your findings will be added to the record. He gave a quick salute with his coffee mug. Fake authority collapses faster than fake evidence. Viral, quote delivered. The camera from Channel 6 caught it clean. Dana closed her folder. County officer, we submit all exhibits including the unauthorized draft metadata analysis and jurisdiction history. The officer gathered his papers. This matter is now elevated. Judge Herrick's will review the expansion land use permit first thing tomorrow morning. People stood in the back. Chairs scraped. Karen didn't move. Another mini-cliff. I watched the projector power down the map, fading from the wall like a lie losing oxygen. And for the first time since the notice appeared on my barn, the room didn't feel stacked against me. It felt like the truth had finally walked through the same door. Judge Herrick's didn't raise his voice, he just raised the permit. The thin folder caught a line of sunlight cutting through the high courtroom windows, turning the brass fastener into a bright point in the quiet room. The judge held it loosely, almost delicately, like a man weighing something far heavier than the paper in his hand. On the clerk's desk, the red void stamp sat ready, backward letters pressed into the rubber like a warning. Dana stood beside me, spine straight, jaw set. Karen sat across the aisle at the HOA table pastel suit from earlier, but somehow more brittle under the courtroom lights. 2 board members flanked her, both staring down as if hoping the floor would open. The county legal officer cleared his throat. Your Honor, the matter before the court involves an HOA issuing a violation rooted in a permit that... He tapped his binder. Was never authorized. The judge gave a soft nod. Miss Whitaker, proceed. Dana stepped forward. Thank you, Your Honor. We submit Exhibit A. She lifted a printed map, the same expansion overlay we saw under the projector's glare yesterday. Here, the watermark was even clearer, internal draft not authorized. A ripple moved through the small gallery. Ranchers, mechanics, retirees, local shop owners, each of them following every word because HOA overreach wasn't theoretical to them. It was a threat they all understood. Dana continued crisp and measured. This is the expansion land use permit Red Ridge Meadows HOA used to justify their violation. Its status. She clicked her pen. Pending. Explicitly non-enforceable. And yet they acted under it as though it were binding authority. The judge turned to Karen. Ms. Larson, he said at the time you issued the violation, was this permit legally authorized? Karen's lips parted, a breath tight and shallow. We believed. The judge raised a hand, palm forward. I'm not asking about belief, I'm asking about authorization. Her eyes drifted to the edge of the table. No, Your Honor. The words fell like a beam losing support. Dana placed another sheet on the stand. This metadata analysis performed by an independent auditor shows the violation packet was built on an HOA workstation. Not county, not state, and the timestamps don't match the claim documentation. Judge Herricks adjusted his glasses. Mr. Callahan, anything to add? I stood. Sunlight warmed the back of my neck. Just one thing, Your Honor, I said. My barn was permitted legally. They tried to replace that permit with a fake one. All I'm asking is that the record reflect who had the right and who didn't. He nodded once, no sympathy, just recognition. Then he spoke to the county legal officer. Does the county acknowledge any enforcement authority derived from an unapproved pending permit submitted by a private association? The officer shook his head. We do not. Karen's jaw tightened. The pastel suit looked smaller now, swallowed by the bench and the weight of the moment. Judge Herricks lowered the permit folder onto the desk. When he spoke, the words carried the force of something that had waited too long to be said. This court finds that Red Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association issued a violation based on a permit that was not in any legal sense authorized. He tapped the folder once with a fingertip. A private organization cannot manufacture jurisdiction where none exists. You cannot enforce what does not exist. You cannot punish under a rule that has not been born. The room went still. He nodded to the clerk. Accordingly, this court revokes Red Ridge Meadows HOA's entire expansion land use permit. The clerk lifted the void stamp. One solid motion, thunk. The sound hit the courtroom walls like a hammer striking a coffin nail. When she lifted the stamp, the word void glared up in red across the permit's cover, the same color as the barn door they'd tried to rewrite. Prop number 3 restored. The truth finally printed in ink. Karen didn't cry, didn't protest, didn't move. She simply folded inward, shoulders caving as if the chair behind her had turned into a hollow frame. A symbolic collapse. Nothing physical, everything exposed. The judge wasn't finished. Any actions taken under the claim of expansion jurisdiction are invalid. Further, this matter is referred for review regarding misuse of county systems and misrepresentation of permit status. One strike of the gavel. This court is adjourned. People stood. Paper rustled. Someone whispered, "About time." Dana let out a long breath. There it is, she said softly. Clean. Final. Outside, as we walked toward the courthouse steps, the noise grew, first a few claps, then louder, then cheers rolling across the sidewalk. A man shouted. Finally, another added. About damn time. Someone stood up to them. I stepped into the sunlight, the courthouse doors swinging shut behind me. Their kingdom hadn't fallen with an argument. It had fallen with the truth. The sun hit the barn door exactly the way it did 9 years ago, but today it felt earned. Same boards, same weathered knots, same stubborn stain pattern I'd sanded twice and regretted both times. But the feeling was different now, like someone had lifted a weight off the ridge. A soft breeze came down from the tree line, brushing across the gravel and the cedar siding. The new sign I'd bolted up the night before caught the light. Private barn, workshop. And under it, a small steel plaque I carved at the forge, "No fake violations here." The tractor sat idling beside the fence, coughing in its familiar offbeat rhythm. The one sound that never cared about politics paperwork or HOA fantasies. I stepped into the barn boots, scraping across the smooth concrete. Cedar scent, layered with sawdust and grease, settled like old memories in the air. Ethan's pickup rumbled up the drive. He parked, killed the engine, and stood for a second with his hands on his hips. "You didn't waste any time," he said, eyeing the new signs. "Figured honesty deserved better real estate." "Subtle," he said. "I'm done being subtle." He walked inside, pausing by the metal permit cabinet. Now perfectly flush, newly painted hinge replaced everything squared the way it used to be before someone tried to rewrite my story. Above it hung the framed copy of Judge Herricks's order. The bold red stamp glared from the document. Void revoked in full. Ethan whistled. "You display that like a hunting trophy." "It's not a trophy," I said. "It's a record, a warning. More like proof." We moved toward the workbench. 3 folders lay stacked there, each marked with a neighbor's name. Jim, the fence guy. Rosa, the retired nurse. The older couple with the RV pad. 3 families who'd shown up at my driveway in the past week with envelopes in hand and worry in their eyes. Went through every page I said, line by line. You wouldn't believe how sloppy some of their claims were. "I would actually," Ethan said. "HOAs get real confident when nobody pushes back." "We sent everything to Dinah," I added. "She filed the letters yesterday." I pointed to the corkboard where 3 printouts were pinned side by side. Violation withdrawn. Records corrected. Violation withdrawn. No jurisdiction. Violation withdrawn. Unauthorized action. Ethan nodded with the satisfaction of a man seeing a machine finally run the way it should. "That's 3 people walking easier today," he said. I looked out toward the ridge. Jim was repairing a section of fence without looking over his shoulder. Rosa was letting her chickens out without checking for notices. The couple with the RV had backed their trailer into its pad, unbothered, unbent. "They deserved this long before I did," I said. Echo Ethan replied, "That's what this is." I stepped out into the yard. The barn door glowed under the morning sun. The same door that had held a fake violation. The same door I'd stared at, wondering how far a lie could reach. "Town Hall did something too," I said. "Oh," Ethan asked. "Bulletin board update. Big poster with the county seal. Title reads, 'Property Rights What HOAs Can and Cannot Do.' It lists every limit by statute, plain language bolded where it matters." He grinned. "Transparency. Imagine that." "I'm not done," I said. "We started something last night. Property Rights Watch Red Ridge, 7 members so far. Goal isn't to fight anyone, it's to make sure nobody redraws a map in the dark again." "You running it?" he asked. "Just moderating, keeping an eye out." The wind shifted. Hint of cedar drifted from the barn rafters. My phone buzzed. Email from Dana County adopting pre-screening requirement. No HOA document will enter the system without staff verification. Also, your case is being reviewed as a model for state-level policy. Under it, paper fails. Truth won't. I put the phone away slowly, letting those words settle. A barn built with truth outlasts any permit built on lies, I said. Ethan looked at me sideways. I'd carved that on a sign too. One day, I said. For now, I'm good with 2. We walked to the barn door. The nail scar, the exact spot where their fraud started, was still visible. I'd decided not to sand it out. "You keeping that?" Ethan asked. "It's part of the story," I said. I put my hand on the door, pushed it gently, and the hinges swung smooth. When it closed, the latch settled with a deep, confident thunk that echoed across the ridge. A sound like a full stop, not a comma. Over the fence, I could hear the neighbors greeting each other. A few waves drifted our way. One man shouted, "Appreciate what you did?" "Mark," another added, "Whole town's better for it." Ethan nudged me. Feel like you won. I looked at the barn, the same barn they tried to erase with paperwork and arrogance. I didn't win, I said. The truth did. He nodded slowly. Finally, someone fought back. The words felt right, felt earned, felt like they belonged exactly where the ridge could hear them. As we headed toward the house, I looked back one last time. The barn stood solid, unbothered, exactly where it was meant to be. The HOA's fake kingdom had collapsed. The barn outlived them. Finally, I whispered, letting the morning carry it, someone fought back and won the right way. The posted void order still hangs on my barn wall, its seal catching the late-day light like the last echo of the hearing. Standing there, I realized justice isn't noise. It's the steady weight of a system finally doing what it was built for. The neighbors who once feared envelopes now walk easier, and I've learned that a single boundary defended honestly can steady an entire ridge. Finally, someone fought back, and the map that tried to erase my barn now protects everyone who lives beside it. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.